Well, hello and welcome to Glasgow Rangers Nation, the channel that brings you your team every single day, guys. And that we always say here, no Patreon, no paywall. There is no paywall protecting the content. It is there for you, for any Rangers fan to access. All you got to do, smash the sub. Well, Phillipe Clement has been speaking to the media ahead of Sunday's game against Motherwell. And there's plenty of things discussed, some funny moments, some pretty depressing moments as well on the old injury front. And you know what? Guys, you've got to say, I think this man here is absolutely fed up to the back teeth of talking about bloody injuries. I think he really is. And it was quite funny that when the journalist asked the question at the start about, we've got to speak about injury, obviously, as I always ask about injuries, Phillipe Clement said, oh, today we're not going to talk about injuries then, and laughed. I think obviously more out of hope than expectation, also trying to make light of the situation that Rangers currently find themselves in. And you know what? It is an absolute bloody jinx at the moment, isn't it? I don't know what it is, guys, but it just seems to me that no matter what, no matter where we go, we just cannot avoid getting injuries. And yes, some of these are muscle injuries, so you've got to sort of question the fitness of the playing staff. Is that the case? Of course you have. But, at the same moment, some of them are impact injuries from absolutely disgusting tackles, like the one on Wednesday night by the St Johnstone player. I utterly condemn, obviously, the racist abuse that he suffered. But I utterly condemn him as well for that horrific tackle. A tackle that could have actually physically broken someone's ankle or leg. And to this day, guys, I'm gonna say this. To this day, I think the attitude of St Johnstone and their players after the incident and after the sending off was utterly deplorable. The players congratulating him and everything like that, I think it just shows how St Johnstone are little more than a bunch of pub footballers who are an embarrassment to the Scottish game. Phillipe Clement said that Lundstram and Roof obviously will not be available for the weekend. And again, there's no surprise in that. I think we all knew that Roof would be out because Mr. Glass is always injured, isn't he? He's always missing. He's always, I don't know. I don't know what it is with him. It seems to have been his entire career, though, that he just constantly cannot stay fit. There is something deeply wrong with that man's muscle tissue or muscle or body, or even it could even be mentality as well. I'm not calling into question the fact that he's injured because undoubtedly he is injured, but is some of the severity of the injury partly in his mind because he's so used to constantly being injured these days. Phillipe Clement did say in the press conference that Rangers want to look into it, want to try and find out a little bit more, look deeper into it to try and get to the bottom of what the issue is with Kemar Roof. And he talked very much about the fact that Kemar was gutted, disappointed. He said he obviously felt so good before the game. He's got his opportunity to start, which he wanted, and it all came crashing down around him again. And he was questioned about the show of some interpret it as petulance. I think some people interpret it as frustration when he was taken off, injured. He throws his shirt in the air. Look, I think what Phillipe Clement said was pretty much spot on. He talked about the fact that Kemar was, very, very frustrated, very, very fed up with what had gone on and just reached, I think, the point where it's the straw that broke the camel's back. It has just pushed him over the edge. And I think in himself, I think he had high hopes that this season, given that hip injury, that hip operation that he had in the summer, that it would be all sorted. But now, obviously, we've seen that it isn't. It is part of the track history of Kemar Roof. And I think, like I've said on a number of occasions, it could have been the last we see of Kemar in a Rangers shirt. But as Phillipe said, it was very disappointing for Kemar as he's doing everything possible to avoid injuries. He said we're looking closely into the details to find solutions for him. As to obviously John Lundstram, he said that that he was asked, is this a 1 week or a 2 week? Is it not as bad as we thought? He said that he couldn't give any sort of estimate on that. He said he would very much have to wait for the scans to come in. You can't scan an injury straight away. So you've got the swelling, wait for the swelling to go down, and then you can do the scan, see the extent of the injury. So, look, it is going to take a little bit of time before we find out what the nature of John Lundstram's injury is, how serious John Lundstram's injury is. Now, I know John has had a lot of criticism from Rangers fans, and I know that lots of Rangers fans don't rate John in the slightest, but he has done very well since Phillipe Clement took over. I don't think you can deny that. He has run the midfield very well indeed. He has dominated the midfield. And at a time when we are so lacking in midfield options, when we have no Ryan Jack, we have no Jose Cifuentes, we have no Nicholas Raskin, we have no Tom Lawrence. Losing yet another central defender, a central midfielder who plays in that too, is again like we've lost all of them now. I mean, realistically, you take Lawrence out of that because Lawrence is more an attacking midfielder. So the four options we in theory had, Jack, Lundstrom, Cifuentes, and Raskin, are all now out injured. So all that, all those two players in front of the back four now are gone. It does put Rangers in a very difficult position, you know, especially if it is the case that all of those players are gone until after the winter break, given the intensity of the fixtures coming up, and especially that trip to Parkhead. Yes, this is a very poor Celtic team, but they do have a fairly fit and full strength squad to choose from, whereas we very much are down to the bare bones. But you know, he did say that he's waiting on the results. We've obviously got to keep our fingers crossed that these results come back. That, you know, perhaps it's not as serious as we first thought. But look, we're Rangers. We know what happens. An injury that's first thought to be not too serious always comes back, doesn't it? With a 4, 6, 8, 10 week outcome, and we end up missing that player for a long period of time. It was very interesting as well in the press conference how Phillipe Clement spoke out about the tackle. You know, he talked about the fact that you know, that he was boiling after the game, that he was, you know, and he said that. And he, you know, he talked about the fact that it wasn't just the Lundstrom tackle that had outraged him in that game on Wednesday night. It was also the foul on Kieran Dowell, where he said that, you know, if Kieran's leg had been on the ground, it would have broken Kieran's leg. He said that that obviously was, in his opinion, a deliberate attempt to break somebody's leg in that tackle. It is a situation, you know, he was asked obviously about the brutality of Scottish football and did he think it was more brutal than any other form of football that he's had experience of. He, of course, said no. You know, he says that you get those sort of tackles in England, you get them in Belgium, you get them, you know, in Germany, you do get them in other places. Yes, England being the primary example. You know, the Premier League is also very robust. The Championship as well is also very robust. But I think he's right again to raise this issue. You know, there is really, I think, a sense of anger that he does not want his players getting injured, was what he said. He does not want his players to be kicked off the field. And I think there was a real, for me, sense of frustration, you know, building obviously on what the injury problems are that we have anyway with the muscle injuries and the impact injuries as well. You know, you remember it was Cantwell had an impact injury. That's why he was out. You know, players are being kicked off the park by opposition players, and this is not good for Scottish football. It's not good for football. It's not what you want to see. Fans want pay to see the best players play. They do not pay to see semi-skilled thugs kicking skillful footballers all around the park, which effectively is what we saw on Thursday night. This is not Clement's words, these are mine. You know, we saw a bunch of semi-skilled thugs kicking Rangers around the park on Wednesday night, didn't we? You know, you've got to say that St Johnstone are a bunch of semi-skilled thugs. That's all they are. They've got previous for it. And Phillipe is right to be enraged by this, and he's right to raise it. You know, hopefully someone at the SFA is listening. I highly doubt it. Someone at the SPFL is listening. I highly doubt it. But he is right to raise it as an issue because it cannot be allowed to continue. You know, especially if like I said on previous videos, if you want to attract top talent to your league, they look at it, they see the fact they're going to get the living daylights kicked out of them by these semi-skilled pub footballers like St Johnstone. They're not going to want to come and play here. They don't want to get their careers ended by some semi-skilled thug doing what that semi-skilled thug did to John Lundstrom on Wednesday night. So, you know, that is just the nature of it. That is just how it looks. And he's right. Philippe's right to be you know, enraged by that. He joked about the fact that you know, in terms of midfield, in terms of up front, there are not a lot of options, and he said we have to look at what is best for the team. He says that we are playing players out of position. He says our story is very clear in every position, and the players know what to do with or without the ball. Now, if you remember back to Phillipe coming to Rangers, he spoke very much about the need to get players comfortable with swapping positions, being fluid, playing in a number of places on the field, and being able to adapt to different situations. And I think this is all what he is talking about. And you know, we've seen that with Dujon Sterling, we've seen it with Tom Lawrence being pushed further back, Kieran Dowell to some extent as well on Wednesday night. You know, this is very much the way it's looking. You know, he was obviously questioned about Dujon Sterling, Kieran Dowell playing in midfield, and again, it's coming back to the looking at in terms of what is best for the team, how these players adapting these players to play in different positions, and keeping that sort of next man up mentality, isn't it? That mentality to go out there and perform no matter what the circumstances. So it was interesting to hear Phillipe talk a little bit about that as well. He talked as well about the fact that the players are coping well with a heavy schedule and preparing well for every match. And one really interesting point that came out for me was the discussion around mentality. Now, look, this is something that has been questioned on a number of occasions with this Rangers team. That the mentality, we've all heard, and I'm sure we're all as guilty of, as I am, of saying serial losers, serial bottle jobs. When the going gets tough, they get hiding. Clement spoke about the mentality, and what he said, I think, was very, very key for me. He says it's crucial we keep the mentality strong. It stays crucial. We need to be consistent in the marathon of the league. We push every time for 3 points. And the other thing that he came out with is that he said that, basically it's crucial we keep a good structure. It's crucial the players are focused in every game, in meetings, in training, in everything they do. And he said one really interesting thing for me, which was he talked a little bit about the fact that when the mentality is right, then everything goes right. If the mentality is wrong, everything goes wrong. And that, so having a quick drink of coffee, for the first time, I think is really a manager recognizing that there was a mentality issue, that it needed to be addressed, and he is addressing it and putting it right, because it is absolutely crucial to everything else on the field. You can have 11 of the most talented. I'm not obviously not saying we have the best players in the world. We have some good players, don't get me wrong, but you can have the 11 most talented players in the world. But if their mentality is off, if they are not focused, then they will not succeed. You've seen in the past Real Madrid go and buy the Galacticos and not win the Champions League, not win the league, and finish second or third in the league with Galacticos, with stars like Kaká, for example. Why? Because the mentality is not right, because there is something deeply fundamentally wrong with the mindset at the club. So Clement identifying for me that is one of the biggest things, that the mindset needs to be right, that the mentality needs to be right, or else everything will fall down. And that, for me, just says a world about this man and how he understands how to get people to play, and more importantly, to get people to win. And he said, look, he'd be lying to himself if he said that, we won't drop points at some point. He says every team drops points in a league campaign because of the marathon that it is. It is tough. And that constant 2-3 games a week is tough. He's not pretending that it's not going to be a situation where maybe in the future we do drop some points. Hopefully not over the next 4 games. Hopefully it's 4 victories. Although there is a debate over whether a draw at Sharkhead would be enough. But really interesting from Phillipe Clement. And he talked to us about the fact that the squad will be in on Christmas Day for a recovery session after the Christmas Eve game against Motherwell. So no rest for the players on Christmas Day. They will at least spend the morning with the training squad as well. And it was really interesting that, he was asked about getting ready, being prepared for games and the shortness of time and everything. But he insisted that, that everyone attends meetings. He said even the injured players attend meetings because he doesn't want anything to become a surprise to them, that, when they come back a month, 6 weeks, 8 weeks down the line, which does seem to be the case with a lot of our players, that it's a surprise, that anything's a surprise, so that they are constantly within the group. They are constantly hearing the same message. They are constantly hearing what is required of this team, of this squad, of this staff. A very good attitude, a spot-on attitude for Phillipe Clement and his staff. He talked about the fact as well that when they have these meetings, when they train, he says that we train for all scenarios. We train for being behind. We train for being in front. We train for everything. He says we prepare for all scenarios to avoid any surprises on match day. We'll be ready to face any style. We work hard on the small details. That again is just a difference in mentality, a difference in attitude to previous managers, particularly the last one. The fact that he does not want anything to be a surprise, that when he goes into a game, he wants his players to be ready for a low block, for being attacked, for being counter-attacked, for transitions, for absolutely everything. He wants his team ready, prepared, so they can go, right, they're doing this, so we need to do this. Now they've changed, they're doing this, now we're going to change and we're going to do this. And I think that is key for me. And it shows that his game management, his tactical understanding of what is going on is absolutely spot on, absolutely fantastic. So for me, Again, brilliant from Phillipe Clement. And it's great to hear that the preparation is always there for games and absolutely spot on. He was asked about the defence and clean sheets. He said it's important we have a lot of clean sheets with the way we are playing. We are always creating chances. The players understand our more offensive way of playing. We also defend better as a team. The players are really determined to avoid any mistakes. He praised Jack Butland for being a great goalkeeper, but he talked about the fact that the defence is not just the defence, that the defence is also the midfield and the strikers and the work they do. I think trying to get over the fact that defending and attacking is a team effort. It is not down to one player or a one collection of players, that everything we do has to be done as a team. So we defend as a team, we attack as a team, we play as a team. It is not an individual. And again, I think it is all part of this sense of team, this sense of belonging, this sense of collectiveness there seems to now be within the squad. If you listen to the senior pros talk, the Lundstroms, the Gatavs, the Goldsons of this world, talking about the team and how there is a united mindset now, a determination to succeed, a determination to win, a determination to go forward and be successful. It appears that Clement is changing that mindset, changing the mentality and putting together an effective team. I felt myself from watching them under Michael Beale at the start of the season, it was 11 individuals on the pitch, not playing for each other, but playing for themselves. And I think that was clear in the fact that we had no tactics, no identity, no style, no way of attacking, no way of defending, and looked exceptionally poor. Clement has put all that right and put it back in. Now, building on that, he talked about the winter camp that was coming up in La Manga and how that would be an interesting time for him, because he said, I will get more time to train the players and I will get more time to speak to the players. He has, since he's come in over the last 2 months, not had a massive amount of time to sit down with the players and talk to the players and, put into place all his ideas. And he talked at the start, didn't he, about the fact that it was going to be a drip, drip, drip approach. Identify a priority, work on it, achieve it, identify another priority, etc. So this winter break, the week, 2 weeks, however long they're away in La Manga, the behind closed doors friendlies will all be an opportunity for Phillipe Clement to further speak to his players, further get his players' ideas across, etc., etc. So I think, again, very good and very promising for the club. He was asked about the Nick Montgomery, who is the Hibs manager. Dogs barking, to apologise. He doesn't like any other team other than Rangers. He heard a word that wasn't Rangers. Anyway, he said Nick Montgomery apparently will be mic'd up for a game so he can speak to the Sky Sports commentators. Now, Phillipe Clement was asked, would he like that? And he said no, he wouldn't, because he said he didn't want people to hear some of the things he says to his staff or to his players, in terms of, them getting, I suppose, an upper hand on what he expects or what he wants them to do in certain situations. He says he also, before half-time, will speak to his staff about what images and what things he wants to be pulled up at half-time. Again, perhaps giving the opposition an inkling into what he's going to do. And he says also that sometimes he says some unkind things as well, which was quite funny, as we've seen on the sidelines when he's ranting and raving at the fourth official, which is, purely justified by some of these shocking decisions that have been taken against our teams, particularly some of those horrific fouls on our players that have put our players out. So Phillipe Clement is right. Look, it's depressing as well. He said that nobody is due back. That is pretty much, again, what we've got is what we've got. There will be no return for Jack, no return for Raskin, no return for Lawrence. None of the players will, no Cifuentes. So none of those players are returning this week. I'm sure, again, he'll be asked again before the Ross County game during the week. But it is pretty much now we have what we have. Sterling, Dowell, King are options. The young players, again, perhaps their options. It is all out there now, and all building up towards that game on Sunday. Well, guys, let me know what you think of what Phillipe Clement had to say. I've got to say, the more and more I hear this man talk, the more and more I am impressed with the way he comes across and what he says. Thanks again for choosing to watch Glasgow Rangers Nation, guys. As always, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please hit that sub, ring that notification bell. It does help, guys. It really does. Thanks for watching. And on the way out, if you can do me 2 things, as always. Number 1, smash the like. And number 2, remember, never forget, we are the people.